Okay, so we are beginning the process of creating a bas relief. And the definition of a bas relief is a piece of artwork that is sculpted, carved, or molded in such a way that it barely protrudes from the background flat surface. Okay, so we're going to build something on a piece of cardboard that's going to be barely protruding from the edge of it. And we're going to take a simple drawing that you make and make it into a three-dimensional bas relief. And then we're going to cover it with aluminum foil and do some etching on top of that. So I'm going to show you the beginning part of this. First, what I did is I drew a picture of a fish. I looked through some of my coloring book pages and tried to figure out what I could use and manipulate to be my own artwork, incorporate some other textures and lines and ideas that I can use for my own artwork. So this is what I chose to draw, and it's a very simple line drawing. You want to make sure that you fill out the page, that it's an interesting composition, and it's something that you can break down into simple layers and cut out and paste on top of each other. So once I came up with my line drawing, I wanted to make a drawing that is a little bit more simple without all the details, and this is just going to be my guideline for the top layer that we're going to do. So I'm going to place this over here, and I've got my line drawing right here, and I want to show you how we're going to number this so you'll know what layers we're going to create. And what I mean by layers, I've got one that's kind of partially put together here. The background piece is layer 0. Okay, this is the cardboard piece is layer 0. Then you're going to cut a portion of your drawing and you're going to create the first layer, and it creates this too, where we put this on top of it. Then we put this fish. This is going to be the second layer right here. Then the third layer, the fourth layer, the fifth layer, and this is part of the fifth layer as well. And then I've got an eye that I've already built up that's going to go right there. So these are going to be glued down on top of each other where they're very neat. Okay, so I'm going to show you the process that I went through in making this. Okay, first we're going to number it, and we're going to number it to where the 0 is going to be the background, the very furthest away that this can possibly be from us. So this is layer 0. All right, everything that's above this line right here is layer 0. Then in my mind, this is the sand line where the water meets the sand in the background. So I'm going to make this layer 1. Okay, so anything that's between these two lines is layer 1, but behind the fish. So you can see that the fish is overlapping this background. All right, so then layer 2 would be this big wave. I'm going to make this circle right here layer 1 too, because I'm going to cut it out and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So I'm going to count some of these fins as layer 2. The lips are layer 2. And I have to think about what I want to be getting closer and closer to maybe stacked on top of things. So the face is layer 3, and I'm going to build the eye separately. this fin is going to be layer 4 because it's going to be part of this. And then these two pieces are 5. These fins are 3 because they overlap the 2s, and 4 overlaps the 3. Now, what I'm going to do is explain the first couple of layers, and then I'll let my video keep going as I'm working on it, so you can see how I'm doing, and so you can see the process. What I'm going to do first is cut away layer 0. So anything, if you need to, you can draw on it. Anything that I have a scribble on is layer 0. So I am going to cut this out as neatly as possible. Oh, I probably should put that under the camera. You want to cut on the line, on your line drawing, because this is going to be your template for the rest of your sculpture. Cut this out as well, because this is part of 0 as well. Okay, so I'm going to take this shape that is left. I don't need the background anymore because that's 0. And I'm going to use the piece of scrap folders that we cut up, and we are going to trace this shape onto this scrap piece of folder. So let me trace this so you can see what I'm talking about. So you're just tracing the actual shape, not the drawing, just the shape of it. Okay, so when I pick it up, you can see that I have that. Ignore this line going down the middle, but this is, we're going to label this layer 0, and we're going to put that to the side. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut away layer 1. So you see where I have the 1s. And when you do this, you're going to end up with 2 separate pieces. You're the fish and this bottom wave that you're going to keep and trace. So I'm going to keep cutting on this line because I want that circle that has the 1 on it cut out, because I want it to make a raised swirl on the background. Okay, so then I have to cut away the rest of layer 1. Make sure that you're cutting as neatly as possible because you're going to be tracing around these and then cutting those out. So we're cutting away layer 1 and keeping what's left. Okay, so these pieces I'm going to throw away, and I'm going to keep anything that doesn't have a 1 on it. Okay, so these are the 2 pieces that I'm going to keep, and then I'm going to take that on another piece of tag board. I'm going to trace these 2 pieces. So I'm going to take this okay, make sure I trace that circle right there. You can see that I have that, and this fish can go anywhere up here as long as it's not covering, not touching the wave down here. So I'm going to trace that. It's okay if you end up drawing on top of the drawing, because this is all going to be cut up anyway and covered with aluminum foil later. Okay, so when you pull this up, you can see the 2 shapes. This is going to be layered number 1. Okay, so I've got 0 layer and 1 layer, and then I'm going to go through and cut away anything that has a 2, which means I'm going to do away with this, And I'm going to try to find the scissors that I just lost. Put it there. Okay, so now, so this big shape right here is a 2, so I don't need it anymore because I'm cutting away 2's. So I'm going to cut this 2 off, this 2 off, make sure that you're staying on the lines. Cut this 2 off. And then I got to cut the lips off because they're 2's as well. All right, so now I trace this shape that's left. Now, I'm going to go ahead and work through this process while it's recording. And you'll see how the next step, I'm going to cut away anything that has a 3 and then trace that shape that's left. Okay, so we're going to call this number 2, layer 2. Okay, then we're going to cut anything off that is a 3. Cutting away 4. Tracing 5. All right, so now I have them all traced. And then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so now you got the pieces that you've traced. So here's layer 0, layer 1, layer 2 and 3, because I shared it on a piece of paper so we can conserve paper. And then 2, 3, and then here's 4 and 5, I believe. 4. Okay, this should be 4. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to do the first couple of pieces, then just show you how to stack the other one. So what you do is you're going to cut away, you cut this shape out. You want to do it as neatly as possible. Cut on your line. Okay, so this is layer 0 that I traced. What I'm going to do now is I'll take that piece and place it on my background cardboard. So that's layer 0, okay? Then I'll take my next piece, which is layer 2. Layer 1, which is this, and I'm going to cut out the fish and this big wave, and I'll glue it on top of here. So you'll cut out the fish and the wave. Well, you won't. This is on my drawing. I'll cut out the fish and the wave and place them on here. So I'll show you what I did again with the pieces that I already have cut out. So this was layer 0. This is layer 1. The fish right here is part of layer 1. Then this is layer 2. This is layer 3. Here's my eye, and I'm missing my little fin somewhere. That I have cut out. Oh, here it is. So this goes right here. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and glue these down on top of each other. Okay. Then I'm going to draw on the details with puffy paint and let it dry. And I'll show you that in another video. Okay, I wanted to show you how much glue to put on. So I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to squirt it if I can get the glue to come out. Yep, it's coming out. All right. So I'm just going to put some around the edges, and then I'm going to take a scrap piece of my tag board and spread it out on my piece. You don't want to put too much glue. I'm just putting a thin line, and then I'll do like a squiggly in the middle. So I'm going to hold this up to the camera a little better so you can see, but there's very little glue that I'm putting on there, but I want to make sure it's spread out evenly. So I'm going to take it and just kind of wipe it every which way so that every part of the back is covered with a thin layer of glue. If you put too much glue on it, it's going to make it look ugly and wavy and wet and damp. So I'm going to glue this in place. This is layer 1. Layer 0. Now I'm going to put my big wave, I'm going to put this to the side so that I can put more glue on the back. Do the same thing where I put a thin layer of glue around the edges and a zigzag in the middle, and then spread it out. Alright, now I'm going to glue this down. You want to make sure there's no air bubbles in it, so you're going to take your fingers across. You want to line up the edges as much as you can. You want it to lay flat. Then I'll put some glue on the back of my fish in the same manner and glue it down, and then place these on top where they go, one layer at a time. Okay, so now I'm going to take the puffy paint and go over it with puffy paint. Okay, so I've got the bas relief built, meaning that it's slightly protruding from the background. You can see where there's raised a little bit. You see how it's slightly protruding from the background? So you can see how it's three-dimensional. All right, now we're going to make it more three-dimensional by using 3D fabric paint. And you need to test the you don't want to use a ton of paint. You just want to use thin little lines, and you want to test how much comes out so you'll know. Okay, and you just want a thin little line. You don't want it to be real thick. So you're going to draw your details with the puffy paint, and we're going to let it dry overnight. You don't want your details too close together because this will run together. So these are going to dry 3D so that you can actually feel it. I went off the line a little bit, but that's okay. Now, what you see here is not going to be what you actually see because, like I said, we're going to cover it with aluminum foil. This is just going to be what you can feel. You want to make sure you're not using too much puffy paint on your piece because it's got to go a long way for the whole class. So these pieces are coming too close together, so I probably will not draw that line in between.
Alright, now I need to do my water.
So this is just going to give another three-dimensionality to it. And once you think it's done with your details, then you're going to let it dry overnight, and then we'll do the next step. Okay, so now I'm going to let that dry overnight. Okay, so we built up the relief from the cardboard piece up until the very last spin, and I think this was layer 5 and this was layer 5. Okay, also built up the eye on top of the face part too, and that ended up being 3 layers on top of the face. And you could do that when you get to the point that if you want to add more with tag board, you can. And then in the last video, I showed you how to get to this point by using 3D paint. And this is going to be covered up with aluminum foil today. We're going to begin the process of covering and etching into the aluminum foil. This is a piece of cardboard, tag board covered with aluminum foil. And then you're going to draw into the aluminum foil eventually in the next video, and then go over it with ink and then wipe it off, and that gives it the patina that you see. This is a smaller example that I did, not quite as raised as the bas relief as this, because if you look at this, this is raised just a little. I think I just had the drawing and then went over it with 3D paint. This one was just 3D paint and then etching into it, and then I made a magnet out of it. So ours are going to be this size, and now we'll go from here. What you're going to have is a piece of aluminum foil, and it's got to be a little bit bigger than the piece of artwork that we have. If you'll notice, there's a shiny side and a dull side. We want to make sure that the shiny side is up when we put this on here. Okay, so just keep that in mind when we get to that point. Now, I have some diluted glue, and you can look in here. It's diluted glue, and I mixed it with water. I mixed a little bit of glue with water just so it would thin it out just a little. You want to cover your entire piece of artwork on the top side of it, and all of the nooks and crannies as quickly as you possibly can. You don't want to soak it with glue, but you want to make sure all areas are covered so that it will stick to the aluminum foil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and make sure that I get around all the edges first. I'm not soaking it, but I'm making sure that whole area is getting painted with glue. Okay, so I got that around the edges of the fish. I'm going to get on the top part. Now I'm going to do it around the bottom part of the fish. You want to make sure you don't skip any areas. Make sure you cover the entire top of the fish. And you need to do all of the top of the cardboard. Make sure that it doesn't dry. We want it to stay wet. And I got to make sure that every bit of the fish is covered, all of the 3D paint. You see where it's trying to dry on me, where I started. So you want to make sure it's all covered. Every little piece of this has got to be covered, but not soaking wet. You make it soaking wet, it'll be hard to etch into it. Now, when you feel that it's completely covered, you can stop painting it, and as quickly as possible, we're going to cover it with aluminum foil. Okay, I'll put that out of the way. Now remember, I said there's a shiny side and a dull side. We want the dull side. Here's the shiny side. Here's the dull side. We want the shiny side facing up. Okay? You want to make sure this is somewhere in the center. If you turn this over, you'll see that you have about the same amount all the way around. Now, what you want to do is start rubbing out your design with your fingers. And you want to start in the middle and work your way outward. And you want to get it in the deepest parts first, because it might even tear on you, which don't worry about it if it does. We'll repair it. There's an easy way to repair it and it'll still look good. But you can see my design is showing up. And you want to kind of push it towards the center when you do this, because, or I mean to the outward part, because you want it to, just whatever with my fingernail. You don't want any air bubbles in it at all. You can't have any air captured in there. You want to get this as flat as possible. You can see my waves showing up. You want to make sure that it's glued to all of the 3D paint. And you just got to keep doing this until there's no air bubbles left. I also like to take a pencil top eraser like this and start just going around all my 3D paint and flattening it out. You may end up tearing it when you do this, which is okay. Like I said, there's an easy way to repair it. Try not to tear it, but don't panic if you do. Kind of go around all the edges of your 3D paint and all the flat spaces in between so that it gets glued down. No tears so far. I feel like I don't have enough glue on the face. want to get it in the deepest parts too, because you don't want any air bubbles. If you end up having any wrinkles, try to flatten them out. Now, it's not going to show up until we do the inking process, but I'm about to show you how to etch into it, and then the next video will be inking it. Now, once you feel like you've got it all rubbed out as flat as possible, you're going to tape it to the back. And I like to do it like a present, the way I wrap a present. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to fold this over and I'm going to pull it tight. And I like to run my fingers along the edge to make a nice crease. And I'm going to put a couple of pieces of tape right there. Okay. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I like to run my finger around along the edge, have a nice sharp, crisp edge. Pull it tight, and then tape it down. Alright, now these edges, I like to push the corner piece that's folded over into the edge, and then I take it and fold the corner into a triangle right there. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and just line it up with the edge of the cardboard. And then I'm going to pull it tight and tape it. I'm going to push this into the corner. Push this into the edge of the cardboard. Fold a triangle. And then tape it. All right, turn it over. Rub out any more air bubbles that you might see. Now, if I had torn it, I would have just put a little bit of hot glue, and I'll help you with that as the teacher, over the tear and let it dry. So you can rub out whatever you feel like needs to be done. And then I will show you about etching into it, which would be the subtractive. What everything we built up so far has been additive, because when you add layers to it, it's building up from the bottom, and the bas relief part is protruding just a little bit from the background. So that's the additive part of the sculpture, and the subtractive is going to be like drawing into it. We're really not subtracting anything from it, but you're drawing into it rather than adding layers to it. Okay, now we're going to do the next step, and that's the etching. If you look at the little designs, like the swirls that are here and the stripes and the feathers on the bird, those are all drawn with a dull pencil. Same thing on here. You can see where I put different lines coming out with the rays of sunshine. Then I put swirls on the dolphin and stripes around the border. Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not going to show up until we do the inking process later, but right now I want to show you how I do the the texture, the line textures and patterns. So everything that we've put on here is additive, okay? So far, now we're going to etch into it what we have. And I wouldn't really call it subtractive because we're not subtracting anything away from we're not taking pieces of it away, we're just drawing into it. But the reason why you see me scribbling here is because I want to make sure that I have a dull pencil. You don't want a sharp pencil because you don't want it to tear your aluminum foil. So once I have a dull pencil, I'm going to take this and I'm going to start drawing patterns into my fish. So here I've got some big polka dots that I put 3D paint on, and I'm just drawing a line around it. And what's happening is you're drawing an indentation into your sculpture, and theoretically I think I just did tear it right there, and I'm just going to repair that with hot glue. Theoretically, after you do that, if you put these lines on there and we go over it with ink, the ink, when we wipe it off, the ink will stay into the lines that we drew. So I'm going to kind of just outline all of my 3D paint, just to make it more raised. Yeah, I think I tore it right there, just a little. Yep, I got a little glue on there. So once I do that, once I go over my design, and outline all of my 3D paint, then I'm going to put different patterns in there. So I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole thing, but I do want you to see how I do patterns. So here around my fish scales, I want to outline around the 3D paint. Then I might go in and put a different pattern. Like I'm outlining the shape of that scale. I'm repeating it over and over again. And then I might come to this one and do the same thing. It's very important that you have a dull pencil, because if I did this with a sharp pencil, it would tear it everywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing that. And then right here, I'm probably going to, y'all excuse my phone. Just put more circles in there to make it the skin look of the fish have a different pattern. And these are just more circles that line up with each other. So you can see how put that indention in there, and I've been doing these patterns. And then I'm going to fill up my entire sculpture with different patterns where I think it would look good. And okay, so now you see this with the etchings that I've put in here, or the textures that I put in here, like the swirls, the scales on the fish. I put in the coral in the background. I put in lines for more waves over the bottom of the ocean. So I tried to add as much variety of texture as I could. And then what we're going to do is we're going to color the entire piece black. And wherever there's indentions in it, a lot of the black should stay in those little crevices. We're going to color the entire thing black with a Sharpie marker, and then we're going to wipe it off with either steel wool or this side of the sponge, the rough side of the sponge. But I'll show you that part when we get to that part of the video, or the next video. So I've got a Sharpie here. I'm going to take this and I am going to color the entire piece. You want to make sure every little nook and cranny is completely covered. You want to make sure you're doing this when your glue is completely dried, because it'll ruin the markers. Make sure every bit of it's covered. You especially want it covered in the little cracks that you drew in there. Alright, and I'll go ahead and finish doing this. Okay, so I got the whole thing covered with black ink. I tried to make sure that it got in all the little nooks and crannies of wherever I drew lines, and the edges of my fish, and just everything that I wanted to make sure that it was completely covered. Then you're going to take a piece of the Brillo pad, and you're going to start wiping it away. You don't want to wipe it away too much, because you want that patina to still show.
You want to wait on that black showing. So once it erases, that really looks cool. All the different textures are showing up, and you can see how the black stays in the crevices.
So you can leave as much black on there as you want to make it really stand out, your raised areas, and then also you can go back in and touch up if you wanted to. But that's pretty much it right there. I'll probably continue trying to wipe some of this off or add more if I want. Okay, and there you have it. See you in the next video.